Hey everybody, today I'm taking a look at Bastille, which is a board game that came out in 2018. This was published by Queen Games and designed by Christophe Bear. This one accommodates 3 to 4 players and takes around an hour to play. So Bastille being a few years old now, and actually at the time it didn't come out to tremendous fanfare, but I will say that generally I enjoy Queen Games. I think they do a good job of striking a balance between having some strategy in the games but still being really accessible, mixed with some good production. So this is a worker placement style game that takes place on this pretty generic looking board here, where you have all these different action spots you can go to, represented by these shields. Each player is going to start with a number of shields here at different levels. So you've got 3 level 1s and a level 2. This is based on the 3-player setup. You're going to have some money. Someone's going to be the first player, and also everybody's going to be dealt an objective card or an end game scoring card. So my end game is to try get a level 5, 6 and 7 of one of these peasants for a bonus of 6 points at the end of the game. So the game is going to take place over 8 rounds, and halfway through the game there's going to be a little scoring phase, and then you're going to continue to the final 4 rounds where there's going to be an end game scoring. So let's talk about all the different spots here and what things we're going to go for to try and achieve victory points, which of course is the actual objective of the game. So let's start at number 1 here. So number 1 is a very simple one, where you are going to get money times 2 depending on the worker that you've placed there, or the knight you've placed there. So let's say I placed this level 1 shield here as the white player. That means I'll get 1 times 2 for a total of 2 coins. But this happens after all of the placements have been taken. So I suppose one of the mechanisms I should talk about is how these ties are going to be broken, because a lot of these different locations have priority or give a bonus to the person with the strongest level knight there. So let's say the black player here placed their level 2 knight here. That means that they would go first because, again, 2 trumps 1. But let's say if I played another level 2 knight here, the person furthest to the left would break that second tie. So you want to get the highest knight there, but also the furthest to the left by being the first to place there. So yeah, the first spot is just to get money. The second spot allows you to upgrade one of your knights. So let's say at the end of the round I've got this knight here, then I could actually swap that for a level 2 one, of course making me more powerful and making me more likely to break ties and get the bonuses. So the first person to do that is going to get a bonus point as well, but the other 2 slots are only going to get to upgrade their knight. The third slot here lets you take one of these bonuses. Again, the person with the strongest knight there is going to get first pick, and they're going to relate to the other spots on the board, which we'll talk about in a minute. But the first player gets first option and the second player gets the second option. This spot here relates to this bag where depending if you're first or second, you get to add either 1 or 2 cubes into the bag corresponding to your colour, and that can be important later. You've got the 5 spot here, which is how you're going to acquire these cards, which is a big part of your scoring. So the anatomy of these cards is pretty simple. You've got the value of what they're worth here, or what they cost. You've got these crowns, which are going to give you points depending on if you've got the majority of them. You've got these diamonds, which give you a point for each one you have. The actual victory points they're going to give you. And as you can see, some of these cards, or in fact all of the cards, have weapons on them. If they're red, that still means that those weapons are outstanding, and you need to equip those people with those weapons. Otherwise, you can suffer negative points at the end of the game, depending on this track here. So if I had, say, 4 cards that aren't equipped, then I can actually lose 14 points. So if you're going to acquire cards, you want to make sure that they are equipped with weapons. And you've also got flags as well, and when it comes to the end of the round, whoever's got the most flags is going to gain one of these bonuses, which again are like victory points, putting more cubes in the bag, getting money, climbing around this Bastille Track here, which I'll talk about shortly. In fact, I'll talk about it now. So the Bastille Track is pretty simple. So all you're going to do is, depending on the strength of your knight you put there, you're going to move your player piece around that track. So let's say the white player went there, I'd move it 2 spaces like so, and this is going to give you points at the halfway point, at the end game point, depending on which line you cross here. So if you really focus on this, you're going to potentially get a lot of points. But additionally, it's how you're going to acquire weapons, and weapons are great because, of course, you want to equip your cards with them to not suffer those negative points. And the final slot here is to is to acquire more endgame bonus cards. Again, the first person to do so is going to get a bonus 2 coins, and you can actually look through the whole deck and pick which which bonus card you're after, not character cards. So that card shouldn't be in there, but just these things like this, just to get all different kinds of objectives, such as again, like the person with the most of these military troops gets 6 points, or the person with the most crowns gets 6 points, all things like that, and you can kind of tailor your strategy depending on what you want to do. And something I should have mentioned on this 5 slot here is that the actual value of the knight is important, because that depends, or that relates to the discount you get off this value. So if I placed a massively strong level 4 knight there, I would actually get a 4 discount, making this 8 card only cost me 4 coins. So after you've played 4 rounds of all the players placing all of their workers and evaluating the spaces and getting your rewards, you're going to come to the midterm scoring, which, as I mentioned before, every player is going to get a point for each gem they have on their cards. You're going to give 3 points to the person with the most crowns, and then you're going to go to the bag phase, which is when whoever placed the, well, in fact it doesn't matter, you're going to draw 5 cubes one at a time from the bag, at least if there's 5 in there, and you are going to allocate them depending on which cube was drawn. So again, the white player here has been lucky enough to have their cube drawn first. You're going to allocate them to one of these spots here, which give you an instant bonus. And this is divided into 2 halves here. So you've got this one here, which are the more powerful bonuses, that when you claim one of these rewards, so let's say I took this 6 coin bonus, you are actually going to lose that cube from the bag and put it back into your general supply. If you go to these slightly less interesting or slightly weaker bonuses, then you are still going to get that reward, but you actually get to put the cube back into the bag for the final round. And these are quite cool. There's a good tension here. And of course, you're incentivized to invest more and more cubes to make it more likely that you're going to draw your cubes from the bag to get these bonuses. And then, of course, you are going to refer to the Bastille Track, get your points depending on how far you've gone, and then equip your soldiers on priority depending on who's got the furthest. So the red player has got farthest along the track. They're going to get to pick 2 weapons, so let's say they pick these 2. And then it's going to be the black player, let's say they pick these 2. And then the white player who will get the dregs of what's left. And once that halfway point's reached, you're going to just move these tiles out of the way for the end game cube bonuses. You're going to replenish all the cards, etc. Replenish the weapons in the supply. And you're going to go again for the final 4 rounds, where a final scoring will happen after that, with the same criteria going again: points for gems, points for the most crowns, draw 5 cubes from the bag, Bastille Tracks assessed, all your characters are scored, or your endgame bonuses are scored, and if every 3 coins you've got is going to get you a point, and every cube left in the bag is also going to get you a point. And of course, you're going to evaluate how many of your soldiers you've got without weapons, which can potentially lose you a lot of points. So as you could probably tell from the run through there, this game is relatively simple. It certainly falls in that medium lightweight bracket and is a pretty clean worker placement game with pretty succinct areas and pretty understandable areas. You know, there's nothing tremendously complex or fiddly here. All of them are pretty simple in their own regard. But I do really like this this worker system, where you are choosing to either place your workers, but you can also choose to invest in upgrading your workers. And this reminds me of a game called Lancaster, which is one of my favourite worker placement games. This one is a lot more simple than Lancaster, but it does have some similarities, and it does strike a certain chord with me to make me think of that game. Though I really like that trade-off. You know, if you are going to upgrade your worker, you are pretty much sacrificing going somewhere else, but that's going to help you in the long term, particularly because the game does play over 8 rounds, so you get quite a lot of potential to take that option. I also like the fact that not only are you investing in these workers, not only to get priority on these spots, but also to boost your power on these spots, you know, particularly when it comes to the money. You know, if you're starting to smash down your level 4 workers here, you can get 8 coins in a single placement. And also with the Bastille Track as well, you know, you're placing your 4 workers down and you're actually flying across this track 4 spots at a time to get past those thresholds to get more and more points. So I like the fact when in a lot of worker placement games, when not only are you just rewarded a power or a bonus just by placing there, you actually have competition to get there as well, because you know, not only are you trying to get the first priority, you can actually block people out completely, because a lot of these spots only have 2 spots here that actually people can go to in the first place, as you can see here. So I do like that competition, and there is a real scarcity to each of these spots, which I think is a completely essential facet for a worker placement game. And I do think Bastille does that really well. There's a lot of options, but you want to do them all. You're going to have to prioritize and think about what your opponents are going to do to make sure they don't trump you and lock you out of going a certain spot that you want to go to. The character cards here are a big part of the game, and you'll find yourself going here a lot. Not only because you want to get the points on the cards in the first place, you are competing for the different symbols, the crowns and the gems to get more victory points, and the competition for the flags is quite important as well for these end of round bonuses, which are pretty strong, especially if you lead you lead that throughout the whole game. You can actually acquire quite a lot of bonuses throughout. And of course, a lot of these cards correspond to the end game bonuses, like these, for example, where again it's just a more kind of synchronized pool of points, and you're going to find yourself wanting to go here because that's where a lot of the points are going to come from. And I do like the way these are designed. There are only kind of 3 or 4 types of these, so they're all pretty simple. But once you start collecting, you can actually line them up like so, meaning that you can clearly see all the symbology that you've got, and you haven't got to just sprawl all over the table and take up loads of space. So that's a good little graphic design choice, and I do like that. I also like the fact that you get discounts based on the workers you've placed there. Just another element of why you want to go to focus on upgrading your workers as well as just getting the actual spots in the first place. So that's a really cool system. Now, something that I was initially skeptical of was this bag building mechanism here, where if you go here, you can place either 2 or 1 cube in the bag, depending on your priority. And I was worried that that's very swingy, it's very luck driven. But I suppose it's a risk that you are willing to take and something that you don't have to compete in if you don't want to. So, if you see your opponents start going here again and again and again and start filling that bag, then you might think, they're going to guarantee drawing all their cubes, therefore they're going to keep getting these really cool bonuses. So you are going to want to find yourself at least getting somewhat involved here. And I do like the fact that, even if you weren't massively lucky in having your cubes drawn, you are still compensated at the end of the game by getting a point for each cube remaining in that bag. So you aren't just wasting your turn and throwing your turns away by going here. And I think, despite this being somewhat important in the game, you're going to find yourself mostly placing your lower workers there because you're simply just trying to trump your opponent based on how many cubes you're placing, rather than getting a discount or an amplified version such as this here or here, based on the strength of your worker. So there's while these parts are important, they're not like the main focus of the game, and I don't think they're going to dominate the game in terms of its strategy and the outcome. I do really like the tension of this Bastille track as well. You want to be leading the front here and leading the charge, because a lot of the time your cards that you've collected will want specific weapons, and you want to make sure that you get the first dibs on which weapons are available. Because, of course, you can potentially lose a lot of points if you neglect that, which can, of course, be very debilitating if you do fall far behind. So there's a constant balancing and trying to spin a lot of plays. Collecting your cards, making that you can equip your cards, trying to get points from here, maybe dipping into the pile here and picking your endgame bonuses, which is quite unique because I was expecting when you came here to just maybe draw the top 2 or 3 cards, pick one and put the rest on the bottom. But you've actually got a lot of flexibility here to look through the whole deck of cards, pick the one you want, and then go from there. I'm really happy that this game stayed within that 60-minute mark. I think if it started to lean towards that 90-minute mark, it would start to outstay its welcome. Not because it's uninteresting or anything, but simply because you can get quite a meatier game played in that 90-minute time frame, where as this one strikes a great balance of being having a lot going on and some good strategies and some good decisions, but falling within that 60-minute mark, which is a lot shorter than a lot of games of this style. So I do like that, and it certainly doesn't outstay its welcome. Even the turns themselves are quick and dynamic, just smashing workers down, and you do all the assessment at the end, or the housekeeping once all the workers are down, which keeps the game moving nicely. So yeah, I do like the flow of the game, and the tempo is really good. Yes, there are 8 rounds, but the 8 rounds do fly by pretty quickly. And there's always a constant jostle for position, and the kind of tension and the dynamism of the game is strong in this one. There's so much competition for the flags, for the certain cards, and of course for all the other things as well. So I do really like the flow, the tempo, and the timestamp of the game. I think is spot on for me. Interaction is embedded in pretty much everything you do, because essentially you're bidding for these spots by placing the workers. But sometimes, as I mentioned earlier, you're going to have to sit back and sacrifice a turn or to by choosing to invest in upgrading your workers. And of course, there's the tension of the track here, and so there's quite a lot going on, and other players' actions are going to affect what you do. And so it's not a multiplayer solitaire. The game board is nice and tight, and player interaction is going to be a constant thread throughout this game. From a production standpoint, I'm really happy with the quality of the components here. As I normally am with Queen Games, I think they do a great job of keeping things affordable, but still high quality. I think the visuals are going to be somewhat polarizing. It's not going to be the most, not having the biggest impression on gamers. It's not a massively striking, beautiful game, but I think it looks quite nice. Everything is clear, everything is well symbolized, and you can tell what everything does quite clearly. So I've got no real issues with the look or visuals of the game. Nothing spectacular, but it does what it does quite well. Additionally, I think the progression of the game is strong because keep going back to the fact you're upgrading your workers and taking stronger and stronger turns as you go on. So as the game goes on and on and on, you do feel like you're moving forward. And if people do neglect this part of the board, they're going to start falling behind. So I do like the tempo and the forward momentum of this game. It certainly feels like you're taking stronger actions at the end than at the beginning. Bastille does have a strict player count of 3 to 4 players, which I think could turn a lot of people off, because I know today 2-player games are getting more and more prolific. And I would have thought that this could be quite easily scalable, of course, with a bit of playtesting, maybe by locking off a few of these sections, just blocking off one of the spots, or maybe using dummy workers or a dummy player to kind of infiltrate the board. I'm surprised it didn't have any effort to scale the game to 2. I suppose in addition to the scaling problems, my biggest issue with this game is the replayability factor, or lack of it, because there's not much variability here. You are essentially going to get the same game from time to time. Yes, the order of the bonuses are going to change from game to game, and some of them are taken out, but I don't think that's going to have a massive impact in the feel of the game at all. Also I'd have liked to see maybe more different types of cards come into play that do different things. But I think the more you kind of add this kind of stuff in, it's maybe taking away from the target audience of who this game is designed for. But from a selfish standpoint, I would like to see maybe a sideboard or something else going on here, just to give you something else to focus on should you choose to do so, and to give it more of a reason to get back to the table. Don't get me wrong, I feel perfectly happy to play this one a few more times. But I do fear that when I get to that threshold, it's going to start losing its appeal, and it's going to feel like you've started to explore everything this game has to offer. But despite those concerns, I think this game is really delightful. I was really happy with my initial experiences with this one. It's really fun, it's super breezy, but despite that, it has got a lot of interesting decisions to make, and tensions to get to the spots that you want to get to, tension to get the cards you want to, the tension of the track here to not only get the points but to get your weapons as well. It has a lot going on here in a very simple rule set and a very clean rule set. So I think this game is an absolute breeze to teach to anybody, specifically if they're familiar with worker placement games and have played any worker placement game before. This one is going to be it's going to feel so familiar. This game doesn't really do anything original, it doesn't do anything special, but what it does, I think it does extremely well. And you know what, just on top of everything, it's fun. It's fun, simple, clean family fun. And I really, despite my initial concerns about this bag system, I actually do like this one. And it kind of, I suppose it's the one thing that this game has to offer that maybe stands out amongst a lot of the other worker placement style games or games of this weighting. So yeah, it has a lot that I like. I think I don't really have any complaints about it at all, apart from those concerns about the replayability. But I was expecting something a lot more generic, something a bit boring and kind of a bit mediocre. And I think this is way better than mediocre. Very happy with Bastille, and I think this was a bit of a hidden gem. I think you can probably pick this one up for quite an affordable price now, because this one did slip under that radar, and I think this one should deserve more credit. Because I know a lot of these intro or to medium lightweight worker placement games are really popular with the masses, and I think Bastille is amongst the best of them. So definitely check this one out if this is your jam. That is Bastille, and this one gets my shield of quality. Thank you so much for checking out this video. If you found it useful or at least somewhat entertaining, then please hit like and consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. Additionally, if you wish to support the show, because I am a one-man operation and I don't get any support from publishers, then please consider backing it on Patreon at patreon.com/chairman of the board, where you can back for as little as £2 per month. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.